Lucky. Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the Iowa Files. This is a free monthly program sponsored by the West Des Moines Historical Society, our donors, our members, the wonderful Friends Foundation of the West Des Moines Public Library, and I think we've got an absolutely fascinating program here today. I have been challenged to use a really weird comparison in my intro. So, Michael Swanger is the owner and publisher of the Iowa History Journal, the only popular statewide magazine devoted exclusively to Iowa's fascinating history. As a reporter and editor with more than 21 years of experience working for Iowa newspapers and magazines, Michael is as tenacious as a raccoon riding a swan. Uh-huh. He carries a torch for the power of professional journalism, which informative and entertaining storytelling never goes out of style. His magazine is not unlike the Iowa Files. It's going to be something different every edition, and I really urge you to go ahead and subscribe to it because it's a lot of information packed in 6 issues a year. So, thank you, Michael, for joining us today.
Thank you, Gail. Well, before we get started, Gail, I just want to say thank you to you and the West Des Moines Historical Society and the West Des Moines Library for hosting me today. It's an honor and a privilege. I've attended several of these on my own, watched them online, and I never would have guessed that having grown up in West Des Moines, attending Fair Meadows Elementary School, Stillwell Junior High, graduating from Valley High School in 1986, that someday I would have a publication of my own that would be available in the West Des Moines Public Library, let alone to be here speaking with you. And I certainly never would have guessed that when I was a kid growing up, going to the library back when it was located on Grand Avenue, and I was learning the Dewey Decimal System, which was, our Google search back in our time, that I would be here today. So I'm grateful to the West Des Moines Historical Society, to Gail for inviting me, and I thank all of you for being here today. So thank you. Gail kind of touched briefly on Iowa History Journal. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it after the program. But again, just to recap what she said, we are the only statewide popular publication devoted exclusively to Iowa's history. We're in our 17th year now. We're located here in West Des Moines. And right now we have, I brought a few of our past issues that are very popular, and I want you to take them all. They're free today. Please pick them up after I'm done presenting. Take one of each. I don't want to take any of them back with me. And we also brought subscription forms, so if you're interested in doing that, we can get you started today. We have our November, December issue literally hot off the press. I just got it back from the printer the other day. So if you're not already a subscriber and you want to start with it, we have it in hand today, and we'll go from there. So with that said, we'll dive into the program here. So raise your hand if you have visited the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. How many of you have been there? A good portion. You've driven by, sure. I'm the same way, So the next time you walk the grounds of the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines, you might be surprised by the number of monuments and memorials that have long stood in the shadow of the Golden Dome. Among them, piercing the sky from the ground south of the Iowa State House, is the 135 feet tall Soldiers and Sailors Monument that commemorates Iowans who fought during the Civil War. The monument's granite column is adorned at its massive base by depictions of Iowa's Civil War generals and allegorical figures. It is surmounted by a victory figure, and it includes 11 major bronze sculptures and more than 40 bronze relief plaques. It was completed in 1896, 10 years after the Iowa State Capitol was built. And similar to other monuments and memorials located on the Iowa State Capitol complex, many of which honor Iowans who served in the United States Armed Forces, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument took several years to make, and its controversial history is largely unknown to most visitors. Now, you have to forgive me at times, as I'm going to have to rely on my notes. There are a lot of names and dates and numbers, and I want to make sure that I'm accurate with them. So forgive me if I appear to be reading at times, but I'm hoping that you're focused on the slides that I have here. All the photos that you see are photos that I took of the monument over the years, with the exception of those that are noted or those that are historical in nature. So, like many Iowans who've mentioned this before, I've driven by the monument or visited the Iowa State Capitol, but not closely inspected the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. And that changed in May of 2017 when I rented a 600 millimeter zoom lens to photograph some of my son's baseball games one weekend. In between games, I decided to go to the Capitol and take pictures of the Golden Dome because it was under restoration at the time. So some of these photos are from that time. I would return in August of 2020 and November 2021 to photograph Iowa's second tallest monument, the tallest being the Sergeant Floyd Monument in Sioux City, while researching its history for a story that I wrote for Iowa History Journal in 2022. So much of the material that is presented here was included in my Iowa History Journal story, but since having written that story, I've discovered more details about the monument, and among my sources include Mary Louise Noun's 1986 story that she wrote for the Palimpsest, as well as the State Historical Society of Iowa's archives and newspapers, including the Des Moines Register and Tribune, and another newspaper called the Monumental News. Okay, so let's dive into how the monument began. In this photo, we see members of the Grand Army of the Republic, the GAR, in Mason City, as well as a medal and a bandana. The GAR, for those who don't know, was an organization of Civil War veterans that provided financial support and memorials to former soldiers. In 1887, the Iowa branch of the GAR requested that the 22nd Iowa General Assembly create a monument on the state capitol grounds to pay tribute to the Iowans who fought in the Civil War. The first Iowa GAR post was founded in the fall of 1866 in Davenport. At its peak in 1890, it boasted 435 posts and a membership of 20,234 in Iowa. Nationally that same year, the GAR had a membership of 490,000. Its Iowa members worked hard to erect the Soldiers and Sailors Monument in Des Moines and another one for the siege of Vicksburg in Mississippi before the national group dissolved in 1956. In Iowa, the GAR was also influenced the creation of the Marshalltown Soldiers Home. Has anyone heard of that before? Yeah, that was built after the Iowa legislature appropriated $100,000 in 1886 for its construction. The group also was instrumental in seeing that most Iowa schools had a flag to raise every morning. After all, as the GAR lobbied officials for funding, no other state per capita provided more troops to the Union Army than did the Hawkeye State. Pardon me. What's more, as the war began, Governor Samuel Kirkwood, to the left, was quick to lead efforts to raise and equip volunteer troops for federal service, as well as to provide the Union Army with food and supplies. Nearly half of all Iowa men of military age, from ages 15 to 40, fought for the Union during the Civil War. By the war's end, 76,242 Iowa men served in the military, with 13,001 of them having paid the ultimate sacrifice, and another 8,500 were wounded. In 1888, the Iowa legislature, with the approval of Governor William Larrabee, pictured to the right, appointed a 6-member commission to solicit designs via advertising for a monument with a deadline of April 2nd, 1889. Prizes from $150 to $500 were to be awarded. 48 people, including 9 Iowans, submitted plans. The commission wanted a monument akin to the Washington Monument in our nation's capital, declaring Iowa should build nobly or not at all. In June 1889, the commission awarded its top prize to Harriet Ketchum of Mount Pleasant, as seen in the top left corner. Her original design to the left included real and symbolic figures. Soon after, however, it was criticized and revised. Noun wrote, Ketchum's design, which consisted of a large equestrian statue on an elaborate base, was one of the few plans submitted which did not have an upward thrust. Most designs included tall columns, others were in the form of Romanesque towers, Ketchum's design was criticized by disappointed contestants who charged that it was modeled after a statue of Frederick the Great in Berlin. Ketchum subsequently revised her design to the right, substituting a tall column surmounted by a figure of victory for the large equestrian figure on her original design, and this is the monument that can be seen today. The commission's second choice was a design by Robert Krause of Boston to the left, and its third choice was a design by J.D. Hunter Jr. of New York to the right. The other 8 designs by Iowans appear in these 2 photos, and I'll give you just a moment to look at those. You can see a mix of ideas, everything from the square base that Harriet had began with to the tall columns. And really the final product was an amalgam of all those ideas. Sadly, though, Ketchum did not live long enough to see her design come to fruition. She died of a stroke on October 13th, 1890, before the state authorized the monument's construction. Following her death, controversies about the project's design and location arose, though this map from 1913 shows that the location remained the same. For instance, the commission, in its 1890 report to the legislature, disagreed with the GAR's request and said that a monument should not be built on the Capitol grounds, which at the time were less than 10 acres. Today it occupies 17 acres. Its members believed that it should be built in a more spacious area, while others argued that a memorial hall, a hospital, or an arch would be a better tribute to the Iowans who served in the Civil War. With public opinion on the matter divided, Charles Aldrich, future curator of the Iowa Historical Department, wrote a letter to the Des Moines Register in 1890 favoring a memorial hall that would include the names of every Iowa man who served in the Civil War. Conversely, the Iowa Women's Monument Association preferred a monument and aggressively campaigned for it. One of its members, Nettie Sanford Chapin of Marshalltown, according to Noun's story, argued for Ketchum's design with its marble shaft. Has Iowa always to be looking after pork or hominy? Chapin asked at a GAR meeting in Dubuque in April 1891, as she followed with this quip, "For the sake of the unknown dead who were sleeping on southern battlefields, let us have the shaft." Chapin and her colleagues ultimately got their wish, and the commission recommended to the 1892 General Assembly that it favor the construction of a monument that would last for centuries. On April 17, 1892, the 24th Iowa General Assembly and Governor Horace Boyes left. He approved $150,000 for the construction of a monument across Walnut Street from the new Capitol building. It would be funded in part by refunded war taxes that were collected at the beginning of the war for equipment, and the center of the monument will be placed at the center of what was previously the old brick Capitol. But the act would not take effect until July 1st, 1893. Builder and architect Robert Finkbein, to the right, was appointed superintendent of construction of the monument. He was also superintendent of construction of the Iowa State Capitol and helped build the Iowa Braille and Sight Saving School, and as well as the part of the University of Iowa. Any golfers here who know of the name of the Finkbein Golf Course? Well, those who didn't, that's the namesake for the golf course. In September of 1893, the Monument's Executive Committee reviewed initial drawings and a plaster model and decided to place ads in newspapers for proposals for the monument with a deadline of November that year. And they received bids, according to the commission's report, for the complete monument work ranging from $136,000 to $300,000, with bids for architectural work from $90,000 to $155,000, and bronze work from $46,000 to $112,000. Following Ketchum's death in 1890, Danish-born artist Carl Roll Smith of Chicago was asked to implement Ketchum's design for the project. In March 1894, the commission retained him to create the monument's bronze work for his bid of $68,000. Roll Smith was to complete his work in his Chicago studio, and commission members were to approve each piece before it was cast and placed by the American Bronze Company of Chicago. On the east side of the monument is a plaque that commemorates Carl Roll Smith and Harriet Ketchum. Excuse me. You can see he was born in Denmark, 1848. He died in Copenhagen in 1900, just 4 years after the monument was completed. He was lucky enough to be able to see the monument finish. Poor Harriet, unfortunately, did not live long enough to see it. This is one of my favorite photos that I found in my research from the State Historical Society's archives. This is wonderful. In the fall of 1894, construction began as the walls of the foundation were dug. They were 27 feet deep to support 3.8 million pounds of granite used to create the monument and to secure its 60 square foot base. One of the heaviest stones weighed 25 tons and was raised 110 feet. A trestle and scaffolding made of timber allowed workers to construct the monument. A spur from the railroad south of the Capitol grounds, as pictured, was constructed to bring building materials to the site. And on September 6th, a cornerstone laying ceremony was led by Commission member James Harlan. Another great photo. This is the advertisement photo published in 1896 by the Monumental News. It provides insight into the painstaking amount of work that was necessary to build the monument in an astonishing 4 months. According to the ad, the architectural work conducted by the Schreiker Roller Company from Davenport began on June 19, 1895. It was completed on October 28, 1895, with the setting of the iconic victory figure. The cost was $94,000. Charles H. Warren Company in Vermont provided the monument's Vermont stone, and the bronze work was supposed to be completed in early 1896, but delays pushed back the completion of the monument until later that year. Any idea of how many materials were used to construct the monument? Any guesses? You could probably throw out some pretty big numbers to venture a guess. I'll give you an idea, just an overview. With a height of 135 feet and 22,000 cubic feet of Vermont granite at its base, it was a massive undertaking, to say the least. In the foundation, a reported 600,000 bricks were used upon 400 yards of concrete. When completed, it would contain about 20 tons of bronze, and the amount of timber that was used to build trestle and scaffolding, as seen in the photo, was about 125,000 feet. But perhaps just as impressive was the fact that there were no reported accidents among the workers who built the monument. This is one of the best demonstrations of what the monument looks like from above, and there are a lot of details on this map, so I'm going to leave this up for a little while so you can take a look at it. Ketchum's design is illustrated in this turn-of-the-century map that offers a bird's-eye view of the monument, included 36 medallions, of which 35 medallions of servicemen were to be modeled from life if living, if not from the best pictures to be had, as well as 4 life-size figures of military men representing the cavalry, infantry, artillery, and navy on the upper base. In addition to the 32 smaller medallions, there are 4 large medallions, one each placed on each side of the monument. 3 of them pay tribute to Iowans, including General Edward Hatch, a Muscatine businessman who became a career soldier and fought in 100 battles during the Civil War. Hatch, who volunteered for service as a private at the outbreak of the war, helped raise the 2nd Iowa Cavalry. He later commanded an entire cavalry division of the Army of the Tennessee. After the war, he became the first commander of the 9th U.S. Cavalry, a Buffalo soldier regiment with black troops commanded by white officers. And his medallion is located on the east side of the monument. A medallion on the south side, above the history figure, is devoted to Edward Winslow, a railroad executive and merchant who served as colonel and brigadier general of the 4th Iowa Cavalry Regiment from 1864 to 65. He participated in numerous campaigns of the Army of the Tennessee, including the Siege of Vicksburg. On the west side, A medallion for William Belknap can be seen. A lawyer and member of the Iowa House of Representatives when the war broke out, he joined the Union Army and became a major in the 11th and 15th Volunteer Infantry Regiments. He fought in the Battle of Shiloh at the Hornet's Nest, no less, and was wounded at the Siege of Corinth. By the end of the war, he was promoted to Brigadier General, and after the war, President Ulysses S. Grant appointed him as U.S. Secretary of War, a position which he held until 1876. The fourth large medallion represents the coat of arms and is located on the monument's north side. 3 of the base figures seen in the photo to the left include infantryman Shelby Norman of Muscatine in the center, who at age 18 was the first Iowan killed in battle. He died at the Battle of Wilson Creek, Missouri. You'll also see William Michael, far left, a school teacher who became a sailor, and artilleryman Captain Henry Griffiths, far right, whose battery never lost a gun during the war. In the other photo, at the far right, is a statue of cavalryman Lieutenant James Horton of Muscatine. He was killed while leading a saber charge at the Battle of Lovejoy Station in Georgia. Additionally, 4 large equestrian figures of Iowa representing Generals Marcellus Crocker, Grenville Dodge, Samuel Curtis, and John Corse were to be included at the monument's base. In this photo, you can see Crocker to the right facing us and Corse to the left facing the Golden Dome. Crocker, an Indiana native who studied law in Des Moines, entered the Army as a captain in the 2nd Iowa Infantry in May 1861, and he was promoted to colonel of the 13th Iowa Infantry later that year. He fought with distinction at the Battle of Shiloh in April 1862, and later he joined General Ulysses S. Grant at the Siege of Vicksburg in April 1863. He died in 1865 and is buried in Woodland Cemetery in Des Moines. Corse, a Pennsylvania native who moved to Burlington with his family at age 7, later in life joined the 6th Iowa Infantry as its major in July 1861. He fought in the Siege of Corinth and the Siege of Vicksburg and was eventually promoted to Brigadier General of Volunteers in 1863 in recognition of his service. And he was assigned command of the 4th Brigade, 4th Division, 15th Corps in the Federal Army of the Tennessee and participated in the Chattanooga campaign. Corse is best remembered for his stubborn defense of the Allatoona Pass in Georgia in October of 1864 against superior numbers despite being seriously wounded, while Major General Sherman was sent a message which was turned into a popular ballad called "Hold the Fort, for I Am Coming." He died on his 58th birthday in 1893 and is buried in Burlington's Aspen Grove Cemetery. The bridge over the Iowa River on US Highway 6 in Iowa City is named the John Corse Memorial Bridge. Curtis, a New York native, worked as chief engineer for river improvements in Des Moines and for the American Central Railroad in Iowa during the 1850s. He became mayor of Keokuk in 1856 and was elected to the Iowa House of Representatives. He was a strong advocate of the Transcontinental Railroad and a supporter of Abraham Lincoln. He was appointed colonel of the 2nd Iowa Infantry in June 1861, forcing him to resign his congressional seat. And Curtis is best remembered as commander of the Union Army of the Southwest and his Army's victory in 1862 at the Battle of Pea Ridge, northeast of Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is also known as the battle that saved Missouri for the Union. And after the war, he returned to Iowa, where he worked for the Union Pacific Railroad until his death in 1866, and he's buried in Oakland Cemetery in Keokuk. Any guesses who this might be? Of the 4 generals that I just mentioned? This is General Dodge. It's a name I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So Dodge, he's the most well-known of the 4 generals commemorated at the monument. He was a Union Army officer, a pioneering figure in military intelligence, a U.S. congressman, a railroad executive, who helped oversee the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Born in Massachusetts in 1831, Dodge settled in Council Bluffs after college, and where his first job was surveying for railroads, including the Union Pacific. At the outset of the war, Dodge was sent by Governor Kirkwood to Washington, D.C. to secure 6,000 muskets to supply Iowa volunteers. In 1861, he was appointed colonel of the 4th Iowa Infantry Regiment. He commanded the 1st Brigade, 4th Division in the Army of the Southwest at the Battle of Pea Ridge, where he was wounded and appointed Brigadier General of Volunteers based in Corinth. He also built railroads to support Grant's army and accompanied General Sherman on the march to the sea in Georgia in 1864, among other major battles. His legacy is ubiquitous throughout Iowa. I think anyone who has visited the Grenville Dodge House in Council Bluffs obviously knows about his history, and that house is a National Historic Landmark. We also know Camp Dodge to be named after him, as well as myriad streets in Iowa named Dodge. Ketchum's design also called for 2 bas reliefs on the base, and the reliefs are a type of sculpture that have less depth than it appears. So it allows the work to be seen from many angles. The relief in the top photo represents the Battle of Fort Donelson. It's where 128 Iowans were killed during the Union's victory from February 11th through the 18th, 1862, near the Tennessee-Kentucky border. The homecoming relief, as seen in the bottom photo, depicts an imaginary triumphal scene of the return of troops after the war, as well as civilian men, women, and children. This gives you an idea of how big the monument is when you're up close to it. Below the relief of the Battle of Fort Donelson on the east side of the monument is the inscription, "The bravest of the brave, Major General Halleck, February 19th, 1862. On the west side of the monument, beneath homecoming, it reads, "Right is right since God is God, and right the day as one." Upon the commission in charge of erection, there were at various times the following persons, in which several names are listed. The monument also features allegorical female figures, including 2 on opposite ends of the base that were altered in their design by Roll Smith. Iowa, on the north side, represents the state's bounty instead of its war sacrifices, and features a woman naked to her waist, cupping her breasts, offering nourishment to her children. Here's a closer look of her. Above Iowa's head, etched into the base of the monument, reads the inscription, "Iowa, her affections like the rivers of her borders flow to an inseparable union." Beneath her feet, the inscription continues, "Iowa's tribute to the courage, patriotism, and distinguished service of all her soldiers and sailors who fought in the War of the Rebellion, 1861 to 1865. This is history. History is on the south side, and it depicts what now described as a stiff-backed, gaunt old woman staring into space with a nude young boy by her side instead of a mother holding a book or scroll containing the story of the war and reading to a youth seated at her feet as Ketchum had envisioned. So this was one of the changes that Roll Smith and the commission had made. And above her head are some of the medallions that pay tribute to Iowa soldiers and sailors. We'll get a closer look of her as well. An inscription carved into the base above her head reads, "The patriotic work of Iowa women during the War of Rebellion, unsurpassed in every excellence." Below the feet of history, an inscription credits the vision of Ketchum, and it reads, "Designed by Harriet Ketchum of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, located and erected by act of the 24th General Assembly, approved April 7th, 1892. Those last few photos were a few that I took last Saturday morning before I came back home to West Des Moines to attend the first annual Heritage Jubilee at the Jordan House. It was a great day of history. Last but not least, the Victory. Victory is the prominent figure that tops off the 135-foot structure. The 26-foot figure holds 2 palm fronds. Fronds are large, flat green leaves that grow from the trunk of palm trees, and there are 4 types of palm fronds, which I didn't know until I began researching this, including the feather variety, which Victory is holding. This photo is an example of the benefit of having a 600 millimeter zoom lens, because I took this picture from the east side of the Capitol in the parking lot. So anyone who's seen the monument knows how tall it is. It's difficult to get pictures because you're underneath it no matter where you are. And with the help of that lens and a tripod, I was able to get something that would work for us to get this. But it also shows Victory in her previous stage before it was restored, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. This 1906 stereograph, courtesy of the Library of Congress, depicts the monument 11 years after it was completed. Unfortunately, commission members were still divided about its design and its location, which would set back the monument's dedication for decades. For instance, James Harlan, for years, voices displeasure with the designs of the Iowan history figures. So too did Edgar Harlan, the curator of the Historical Department of Iowa. Another commission member, and this is incredible to me, proposed in 1911 to move it to the riverfront on the east side of the Des Moines River between Walnut and Locust Streets. Can you imagine unearthing this and moving it? I can't either. In any era, in spite of our technology. Well, fortunately, none of the complaints resulted in changes to the monument's design or location. This is probably my favorite photo of the monument, historically speaking, and I was really happy to find this in my research. We'll spend a little bit of time just talking about this. But this picture was taken on September 20th, 1909, when the Army tournament was inaugurated with a parade of troops and equipment in downtown Des Moines. They passed by the monument in front of a reviewing stand filled with dignitaries, including Republican President William Taft. A crowd of approximately 75,000 people turned out to hear Taft make a speech in front of the monument after the parade passed by. By 1917, according to Now, the Capitol grounds had been enlarged and the site where the monument stands cleared of abutting buildings and debris. Note the homes in the background. Can you imagine 75,000 people turning out today to hear someone speak anywhere, let alone at a monument? But the photo is so interesting to me because the homes are so close by, and we know that off to the right is what we know now today is to be the East Village. But incredible to think about people living so close to the monument and so close to the Capitol. So finally, after nearly 50 years, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument was completed. After it was completed in 1896, an official dedication ceremony was held on June 7th, 1945. At the time of the ceremony, the U.S. was still fighting World War II against Japan, less than 1 month after defeating Germany in Europe. Remarkably, and this is incredible to me, 2 of Iowa's 7 remaining Civil War veterans attended the event, which was held during the 71st annual encampment of the GAR. And they included John Gugel, 97, of Shenandoah, and David Sisk, 96, the last Civil War veteran at the Iowa Soldiers' Home in Marshalltown. Gugel, who was reelected to his 4th term as department commander, spoke briefly about the news of the day, which was America's focus in defeating Japan in the Pacific Theater. Excuse me, you've probably read the quote. "Our war was nothing compared to this one. Of course, the Civil War was no picnic and it temporarily tore the nation apart, but this war is frightful. My heart goes out to the boys who are fighting now." That was a quote from the June 7th, 1945 edition of the Des Moines Tribune. Can you imagine a Civil War veteran still being alive and able to speak about the horrors of World War II? Just incredible. I'm so glad that the reporter got that quote. And then Sisk also declared his support for the war effort. He said everyone should do all he can to support our boys in this war with Japan. It looks to me like it will last a long time, and our forces are going to need every bit of material and money the nation could possibly muster. Well, we know that to not be true, because a couple months later, the U.S. dropped 2 atom bombs on Japan, and we ended the war in the Pacific Theater, which also ended the war. With the 2 Civil War veterans present, the monument was dedicated as speakers paid tribute to the veterans of the Civil War and later wars during the 30-minute ceremony. Music was performed by the National Association Fife and Drum Corps. State Curator Ora Williams gave a short history of the monument. GAR Department Commander of the Sons of Union Veterans W.T. Allstrand read President McKinley's tribute to American soldiers, and Helen Tadwald of Muscatine, president of the Iowa Department of the Women's Relief Corps, laid a wreath on the monument before the invocation and benediction. This is the only photo that I could find from the dedication ceremony. It's the only newspaper clipping I could find as well. There may be others, but it's all that I could find, and the Des Moines Tribune was there to cover it. And while I'm glad that they got a picture of Mr. Allstrand, I would have much preferred that they captured a photo of the Civil War veterans who were still there. So it's kind of sad that that didn't take place. At least it was covered. At least we have this much. It also, just as an aside, reminds us of the importance of newspapers and having reporters cover all these day-to-day events, not just hard news, but feature stories and things, because newspapers are the first draft of history. And when we start losing those entities or other publications that cover things, we're also losing our history. For the next 5 decades, the monument stood its ground but began to show signs of wear and tear. Like the thousands of Iowans who fought in the Civil War, it seemed as though the grandest monument to their sacrifice and courage was at risk of being forgotten by Iowa's citizens and elected officials. That is until 1995, when a movement arose to restore the monument at a cost of $250,000. And the creator of a beloved comic strip character would play a role to help its restoration. How many of you grew up, as I did, reading Dennis the Menace? Yeah. Well, how many of you knew of its connection to the Soldiers and Sailors Monument? You're not alone. I was the same way until I began researching this. Well, Hank Ketchum, as you said, the creator of the popular cartoon Dennis the Menace, was among those who helped raise funds. What was his connection to the monument, you might ask? He was the great-nephew of the monument's designer, Harriet Ketchum. He agreed to make 475 prints of his cartoons showing Dennis's support his support of the effort to preserve the monument as a fundraiser. Iowa deserves a monument for its valiant soldiers and sailors. I have come to the rescue the best I can. I'm especially proud to have dear old Aunt Harriet as the creator, he told the Cedar Rapids Gazette on September 3rd, 1995. I love the cartoon. Come on, guys, we're going to help clean up the soldiers and sailors. I think he means the monument. They sold all 475 prints quickly, and it was quite a benefit to the reconstruction of the monument. In 1999, with funding secured, the monument was restored by Griswold Conservation Associates. After more than a century, it had suffered deterioration and damage caused by weather and vandals, including graffiti and missing pieces to the bronze sculptures. Crews blasted pulverized walnut shells to remove surface grime from the monument. In 2015, the monument underwent rehabilitation, including stone patching, stone replication and resetting, stone cleaning, and repointing of the structure's base. Work was completed before a ceremony held that year to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War. In 2021, additional work was completed on the monument statues by Smith Art Conservation, including heating the sculptures to clean and apply wax sealant coatings on them. Crews used a 150-foot boom lift to access Victory. The green patina that you saw earlier on the picture that I had of Victory, well, that had developed over time, and it was stable, and crews reported there was no corrosion of the figure. Still, they applied a stain and sealant to return Victory to its original chocolate color, like that of the other bronze sculptures. So this year, in commemoration of the 160th anniversary of the conclusion of the American Civil War, I hope that you take the time to visit the Soldiers and Sailors Monument on the grounds of the Iowa State Capitol to appreciate its artwork and to pay tribute to Iowans who served during the deadliest military conflict in U.S. history. Monuments like this one play an important role in shaping our collective memory. They serve as tangible reminders of historical events and figures, helping to preserve our cultural heritage for future generations. And they also have the power to inspire us, to remind us of our shared humanity and the values that bind us together as a society. Here's one last view. And again, I just took this last weekend. One more view of the monument from the Iowa Revolutionary War Memorial at the Iowa State Capitol grounds. So the American Revolution Experience exhibit was at the State Historical Society of Iowa's museum last weekend. I went to visit it. It's on display now at the Gold Star Military Museum in Johnson, so I encourage everyone to visit it, especially as we anticipate Ken Burns' upcoming series about the Revolutionary War, and next year, obviously, is America's 250th birthday. And that was taken from the Revolutionary War Memorial perspective. As you know, it was just in the news about a week ago, they added a name to that memorial. So it's quite timely. So thanks again, you guys. Thanks for inviting me to discuss the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it or Iowa History Journal. Yes, sir.
I've always wondered if there was an aerial, like say a drone video of, flying around that. Because it was always my dream to be able to get a copy of that. I had a friend that worked with me in the police department, and I asked him what time it'd be possible to fly around that in a circle, and get that sort of an image, of that. So do you know if there are any video copies of that?
There might be, yeah, that's a great question, Vince. If anyone could ask and request that to get it done, it would be you in official capacity. So I think everyone knows Vince's work here in town. Vince is also my brother-in-law, for those of you who don't know. So Vince is a talented photographer and historian, and if it hasn't been done yet, I think in your spare time, when you're not working on 100 other projects, that'd be good. I haven't seen anything in an official capacity yet, Vince. If anyone might have something right now, it might be Dr. Kevin Mason with Notes on Iowa. He just contributed his first story to Iowa History Journal in our upcoming issue, our new issue, I should say. He's a professor at UNI, but nothing in official capacity. I checked with the folks at the Capitol a few weeks ago, and nothing yet. But I would think with all the technology available that it'll happen soon.
I've always envisioned something like that because, in a lot of movies that we see, especially like in James Bond movies or any of those movies that are filmed in Europe, and how they'll circle around monuments and, anywhere, the Vatican, anything like that. This deserves that sort of coverage.
It does deserve it. And if I had a drone, that'd probably be one of the first things I do. We'd probably have to get permission to fly it on the Capitol grounds, but it would be a great shot. So, yes. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I noticed on the statue, the quotation above and below the picture that's on the base of the statue, that they were so faded it was hard to read.
Yeah.
On a restoration, they have restored those in.
They did, and some of it is a little difficult to see, and that could be a result of my photography and trying to get a little close. In the time of year, I think when I shot it that day, the light was a little harsh, but they did do that to enhance some of the engraving. When you go see it in person, it shows up a little better. But you're right, there are parts of it that still show its age. But the fact that it had not been restored for 50 years speaks volumes about how we just ignored it for such a long time. We didn't value it. And I'm so glad that at least that began to take place again 10 years ago. And I think now moving forward, everyone's more aware of the monument, and so are our officials. So I'd like to think that they're going to continue to pour the resources into that are needed to keep it up for future generations. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you know any of the history of those two guys, two men after 1945? I mean, not 80 years after the film.
Yeah, I haven't dug into. Yeah, I have not dug into their service records. I'm sure they're available. I did not get into that. There would be at least a record of their military career at the State Historical Society of Iowa's.
Boys or
What's that?
former boys?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would assume most of the men who fought then were. So, but no, I don't have any specifics about their service. Yeah, incredible to think that they were still alive. And like I said, I wish the newspaper would have taken their picture. That to me would have just been a historic photo, but glad that we got what we did have, so. Any other questions?
I have a
No.
question from online.
Sure.
Was there a committee that decided who would be represented of the kind of ordinary
Yes.
soldiers and sailors? Was there controversy attached with that, or was it an easy decision?
I guess it was an easy decision, Gail, because in everything that I found, among all the controversies about its design and location, I didn't find anything that suggested there was any kind of conflict in terms of who would be featured on the statue. I think they wanted a range, obviously, of everyone from generals to your common soldier, if you will, but nothing that I found suggested that there was any controversy about that. So that might have been the one rare unifying point of it, because obviously there was so much division and bitterness about it. I mean, just the fact that it took 50 years for it to be dedicated would suggest how difficult it was to get it erected and get it officially recognized. But no division about that as far as I know. One last note about IHJ. If you're interested, don't forget, I have free back issues here for you to take home. If you're interested in subscribing, we have subscription forms here. We can start you with our current issue. And again, thanks again for being here today. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, West Des Moines Historical Society and the West Des Moines Library. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. So, while we're talking about monuments and dedications, next Saturday at Woodland Cemetery at 11 a.m., the Abigail Adams chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution will be erecting and honoring a monument that celebrates Woodland's addition to the National Park Service's Network to Freedom. That was a project that the West Des Moines Historical Society headed up to identify people who were involved in the Underground Railroad who are resting at Woodland Cemetery, both freedom seekers and allies who were part of the efforts, like James Jordan was. So, amazing cemetery. Come see and learn about the at least 15 people who were buried there who were part of the Underground Railroad. Our next Iowa Files will be on Sunday, November 16th. It will be over the hill to the Poor Farms. So Poor Farms were one of the very first basic social services offered for the poor, disabled, elderly, and lasted well into the 20th century. So Gayla Harkin was a longtime administrator of the Poor Farm in Boone. She will share her stories of programs and residents. So again, thank you for attending today. Thank you to our donors, members, Bravo Greater Des Moines, and the wonderful Friends of the West Des Moines Public Library Foundation. Have a good day.